So you've decided to train online, for instance, if you're going to jump on Zwift, if you're going to use Trainer Road, if you're going to use a training plan as a cyclist. A lot of these training plans will use functional threshold power, FTP as it's shortened to. Now in essence, functional threshold power is the power that you can sustain for a 1 hour effort, a steady state effort. It's the power that you can sustain for that 1 hour effort. Great stuff, not a problem at all. It's a nice marker of performance, and particularly a nice marker of performance for 1 hour. The problem that I have with it is a single data point. It doesn't give us a whole spectrum of your fitness. If you're a 25-mile time trial rider that's going to be riding for about an hour, an FTP is probably the best marker of your performance going. Even to a certain extent, if you're a 10-mile time trial rider and you're going to be riding for 20 to 25 minutes, an FTP is going to be a fairly good judge of your performance. However, if you're a sportive rider, if you're a road racer, and we've got a mix of intensities, or you're a cyclocross rider or a mountain bike rider, and you're attack, recover, FTP isn't potentially related or isn't essentially related to your performance in that same way. It doesn't give us that whole spectrum. It's like going to the car dealership and saying, I want to buy a car based on its acceleration. You don't know what its braking capability is, you don't know what its cornering's like, you don't know what its fuel economy's like. You haven't even asked how many people you can get in the car or whether you get a suitcase in the back. A single data point doesn't sell it, unfortunately. So whilst in terms of making things equal on Zwift or Trainer Road and very easy to set a training session up, it doesn't give us all we need in order to determine your fitness and your physiology. From a sports test, what we want to do is we want to give you a much better understanding of where your fitness is. And so the sports test will look at your endurance, it will look at your threshold, it will look at your peak, it will look at your recovery, it will look at your efficiency and economy. And by looking at a spectrum of performance markers, it will see where your strengths and weaknesses are. Now, it might be that we use a threshold measure, an FTP power measure, in order to help you determine your training, but that is going to be determined by where your current fitness is. I've seen classic examples where somebody that's a long distance rider, for instance, an Audax rider, has got a very, very effectively, in relation to their peak power output, a very high functional threshold power. So they'll get to what's functional threshold power, but they can't ride above that because they're not used to acceleration, they're not used to riding hard uphills, because they're going to go all day long at a nice steady pace. So if you give them a 20-minute or a 1 hour FTP test, the results show that, yeah, whilst their FTP is okay, there's nothing above it. So basing training upon that, we're not training them appropriately. At the other end of the spectrum, if you get someone that's doing lots of short, high-intensity repetition work, they can have a very, very high FTP number, but actually when we look at their endurance is very, very poor. So again, trying to base fitness and training based on a high, artificially high FTP, their endurance training isn't done at the right intensity. So when they come to try and build endurance pace, burn fat as a fuel, we're finding that they're not seeing the training impact that they need. So using FTP can be valuable, but I would say be very, very careful with it, because it's, whilst it's an objective marker, it's not an overall marker of your complete physiology.